Welcome to the Sales Leader of Influence show. For sales leaders who lead with soul, spirit, and spine. In a world obsessed with tactics, this is the show for those who know leadership is personal. And here's your host, Bernadette McCLELLAND.
And good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of the Sales Leader of Influence. And yes, leadership is extremely personal. And today I'm going to take this down a definite personal track. It's going to be something a little bit different, and I want you to give yourself some space. So if you are driving and listening to the podcast, then eyes on the road, please. If you are on YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook, then give yourself some space, because we're in such a crazy world at the moment. There is so much going on around us that we really need to give ourselves some space. And when we give ourselves space, then we are open to noticing things. We're open to seeing things and hearing things and really being able to grasp different thoughts and different insights that we may not necessarily pick up if we are always on the go. So today, I want to do something a little different. I want to introduce you to a concept, but I also want you to be able to take away with you an exercise that is really going to help you identify a little bit more of your own leadership, instincts. And so we are, in today, I don't want this to be a teaching or a tactics thing. I really want today to be able to shift some perspectives that you have around your own leadership. So that's what I want to do. And so I've just finished reading today the Jobs of the Future report. And what it's saying is that 41% of employers or businesses globally in the next 5 years are going to reduce their workforce due to AI. Now, we've heard all of those statistics before, but I don't want to come from a lack perspective with those statistics, because that's typically what we hear. We typically hear, doom and gloom and all the rest of it. I want us to reframe that from a lack perspective to an opportunity perspective. And where I'm coming from there is that if you are a leader today and you can really zone in on leveling up from an identity perspective, you will be ahead of the game. So there's two ways that we can kind of look at that. We hear mindset all the time. Mindset is simply the way you look at doing things. Identity is who you become. And when I built out the Sales Leadership Academy, the foundation is not mindset. The foundation is identity, because we need to look at who we need to become as leaders moving forward. It's not necessarily what we do and the mindset we have, but it's who we need to become. So we know that forecasts just aren't happening. We know that that win rates aren't where we want them to be. We know deals are stalling. We know that there's a real heaviness out there when it comes to running a sales team, running a business, anything to do with revenue generation, being a revenue leader, a sales leader today. There's a couple of different ways that you can, the statistics are there: Rain Group, Forrester, Salesforce, ad infinitum, ad nauseum, we know it all. But there's different groups of leaders out there. There's the ones that are saying, we're good, and they are good. And for lots of different reasons, they're good. There's others that are saying, yep, we are seeing the numbers. We're not seeing the numbers. We're seeing bad numbers, but we're fine. We're doing okay. We don't need help. And then we've got the other group that are the double crosses that are not making the numbers, but they're blaming. And it's like marketing, or it's lack of resources, or we don't have enough time, or we're onboarding, or there's always an excuse. And so you got to think, well, what is the real problem? Because too many times salespeople get the blame. So I'm kind of going out on a limb here, but too many times salespeople get the blame. And I think in a lot of cases, not every case, but in a lot of cases, the problem is ego. And the problem is the salesperson's ego. And so I'm speaking here from experience, okay? So I'm putting myself into this bucket as well. And where I'm coming from there is that too many sales leaders out there aren't asking for help. They're not putting their hand up. They are pretending that everything's fine. And so, I said when I started this Sales Leader of Influence show that I was going to share stories of my clients, no names, but also stories of my journey as well, because we are all on a journey at the moment and none of us know what's around the corner, really. And so this time last year, I went through I've always had a successful career, and I went through a bit of a dip. And the dip was that I was at a crossroads. And I went through each of these stages, and it was like, blaming this or blaming that and staying the same. And I gave myself space. I gave myself just about the whole year. And what I did by giving myself space, it actually allowed me to be open to noticing things, to receiving new ideas, not to be that bull in the china shop, or not to be the person that, got to do this, got to do that. Oh gosh, what if I don't do this? What if I don't do that? Which so many of us out there think that way. So I made a conscious decision to become a different version of myself, a different leader. And that included completely remodeling my business. And this is how the Sales Leadership Academy was born. And very, very deliberately, I looked at what my strengths were and have only played to my strengths, because those strengths have helped my clients in the past. And so where I'm coming from here is that sales leaders don't just lead sales. You also lead identity shifts in your teams. You, as a leader, have an identity shift that needs to happen to go to the next level. But your salespeople also must level up their identity as well, to be seen out there as different, to be seen out there as a serious contender. So with the shift that I made, I created my own philosophy, if you like, which was 2 words: deliberate disruption. And so the premise behind deliberate disruption was, for me, that if I didn't deliberately disrupt the way that I thought, felt, and acted, then something or someone else would do it to me or for me. And so this is where we are at today. We have a responsibility to uphold our own standards. And so I would throw it to you and I would ask, what are your standards? And what is there that you may need to deliberately disrupt about the way that you think, feel, and act when it comes to you and your leadership in your business or your team or your life? If you want to go to market faster, diminish that gap, get to market quicker, bring those results in sooner, then you can't keep doing what you've always done. We know that. So how do you really get that exponential growth? And so I refer to it as going vertical. How do you go vertical? How do you completely shift? And so with my little transition this year, there was a lot going on in my head, as you can imagine. But I used the metaphor. I kind of pictured a waiting room. So if you picture a foyer or you picture a waiting room, and this is how I did it, is I called it the gift of the gap. So I gave myself a gap year if you like, but it's a gap. And a gap can be between anything. A gap can be between no results and exponential results. A gap can be between the fear that AI is providing people out there in the marketplace with loss of jobs, or it can be the opportunity that leaders have, they up level. And so what is the gift of the gap? So I gave myself this gap, and I kind of metaphorically portrayed it as a waiting room. And inside this waiting room, around the waiting room, just like a doctor's surgery or a dentist's surgery, were 3 doors. And each of those doors had something in the room, but only one door had certain criteria that you could not get in there unless you abided by the criteria. But inside that door is the exponential growth. And that is where the transformation happens. So I want to share with you what's inside each one of the doors, what's inside each one of the rooms, and how it might relate to you, and how it might relate to your business or your leadership or even your life. And so the first room has on the door, just like a door sign, has the sign distraction. And so if you think of distraction and you think of distractions today, I mean, just in normal everyday life, there's drama, there's social media, there's doom scrolling, there's a whole heap of things. But if you think of a sales leader and you think, okay, well, what's the distractions that a sales leader can have? Well, they also have drama. They have avoidance. Some of them have entitlement, triangulation, where the leader's getting caught up with not so much gossip, but not holding things to themselves. So if you stay in the room of distraction for too long, we know where that leads. So there is a door that heads outside to distraction. And so you have a choice. You can leave that room and come back out into the foyer. Come out into a space where you can rethink things. The second door is the door that has default on it. And this is the door where most sales leaders hang out. This is the room where most sales leaders hang out because it's safe. Now, in this room, there's lots of cupboards. And inside the cupboards, there are hacks and there are guru books, there are insights, there are all these different tips and tricks, and they work. And so the leaders inside the default room keep going back to these tips and tricks and little insights and distinctions, but they're not sustainable. They fall back, they default back to the way that they've always led. And the reason they fall back is because they haven't shifted their identity. They haven't leveled up. Because what we do is we bring with us our past and all the stories and all the experiences and all the excuses and all that baggage. But if we aren't able to up level, and if we aren't able to shift our identity, it doesn't matter how much training we get, how many great ideas we get. It doesn't matter, because they'll last for a little bit and then we'll fall back. It's the classic New Year's Eve and the gym membership. So both of those two rooms are operated by ego. Ego, because that keeps us safe. But there is a third room. And the third room is called disruption. And the third room can only be entered when you drop your ego. It can only be entered when you lose your need to control, when you lose your need to get everything right, when you lose your need for saying, or this is how we've always done it. So this room is the scary room, because you can be visible in the other two rooms, but to enter the room of deliberate disruption, it's more than being visible. You need to be seen. And so these are the three rooms. And I would challenge you to think to yourself, what's it going to take for me to enter the third room? And so that third door relies on a couple of things. And I said at the outset of this episode that I want you to do something different. And what I want you to do, and if you've got access to a pen and paper, great, grab it. If you're driving, just keep your hands on the wheel. So first and foremost, I would ask you, which room do you currently spend most of your time? Is it the room of distraction, the room of default, or are you one of those few that are already in the room of deliberate disruption? So if you aren't, I'm going to ask you, what part of you, when you think about yourself, you think about your own identity and how you show up, which part of you have you always wished you could change? Or which part of you have you thought, I'm really not happy with that. I wish I could change that part of me. And I'm not talking about you changing you, because it's not about that at all. There will be some part of you that you're not happy with. And so I'm going to give you an example. It could be as a sales leader. It could be that you feel uncomfortable about holding your team accountable, because maybe a couple of them might push back, and perhaps you don't know how to relate to that, or you don't know how to respond to that. So once you identify what part of you you're not happy with, I want you to then attach to that an emotion. So in this case, it could be disappointment. That particular leader could feel disappointment, or that leader could feel fear. And the reason for fear is because they have a need for approval. Or it could be shame, because they may feel that they've got a fake leadership. So therefore, internally, they're feeling this kind of shame. Or it could even be guilt, because they may feel that they're letting the team down. So there will be an emotion attached to that part of you that you're not happy with. And so I'm going to suggest or encourage you to name that emotion, and then we're going to flip it, because it's the flipping, it's the moving toward the emotion that you really want to move toward. That's where change is going to happen. So in this instance, instead of that leader feeling fear for this need for approval, perhaps instead he decides that he's going to feel a lot more, he wants to feel that he's got more certainty. Maybe that's the case. I want more certainty. So maybe in that case, he needs to get some different tools to use. Or maybe if there's shame there, maybe it's a case of a little bit more self-confidence. So maybe he needs to work on his beliefs. Or maybe if there's guilt there, maybe it's a case of integrity and there needs to be some kind of an alignment. So my question to you then is, which room do you want to move to? And so what's one thing that you could do to actually flip that negative emotion that is coming from that part of you that you're not 100% happy with? Because this is all forming part of your identity shift. This has nothing to do with mindset. So this is what I wanted to share with you today, because we are at a point in time where you're going to have to differentiate yourself out there in the market somehow. And so the Sales Leadership Academy, the Sales Leader of Influence Accelerator, which I'll get Jason to put the URL up onto the screen. If you were to go to salesleaderofinfluence.com, you can have a look there. But if you're interested, just click on the link and key in some details there on the application form, and let's have a conversation. The main part of this is you positioning yourself before you look at your team, before you look at people or processes or performance. You position yourself for ultimately having a presence out there in the marketplace, a commercial presence out there in the marketplace. So that's what this is all aimed for, because you need to be able to differentiate yourself. Forget AI. Forget differentiating yourself against AI. The number of leaders out there that you will be competing with internally within your organization and externally is shrinking as well. And so I wanted to share that with you. We're going to put the link in the show notes, and I would love for you to share any thoughts that you have. Contact me if you want. If you've got any questions, if you've got any comments, if there's anything you want specifically for me to address, I'm really heading down this track. I'm super definite that I want to make an impact out there for sales leaders. I know too many of you out there. Too many of you are my clients, and you've shared a lot with me. And I want to be able to provide tools, whether it's the hard skills around coaching, the human and the deal around beliefs, behavior, and business, whether it's revenue and role clarity that I'm rolling out already, whether it's creating that high-performing team culture, or whether it's bringing you to the market as a thought leader and positioning you across identity, wealth, and authority. That's what this is all about. So on that note, I'd love you to subscribe. I'd love you to follow me. And I look forward to speaking to you this time next week with another riveting episode of the Sales Leader of Influence. We'll speak to you then. Have a really successful week.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching the Sales Leader of Influence show with your host, Bernadette McCLELLAND. See you next Wednesday live at 5 o'clock Eastern.